Hey everyone, and thank you for participating in today's lesson. We're here to talk about an introduction to project management. In today's lesson, we're going to first define project management, provide a brief history. We are also going to discuss the role of project management in health and human services, and then we're going to introduce the process groups and the knowledge areas that help make projects successful. So let's go ahead and dive in. So project management has been defined as a series of structured tasks, activities, and deliverables that are carefully executed to achieve a desired outcome. Pretty simple, right? They are temporary efforts that are designed to create value through unique products, services, and processes. Another definition is that project management is the application of processes, methods, skills, knowledge, and experience to achieve a specific project objectives according to the project acceptance criteria and within those agreed upon parameters. So there are final deliverables, and those final deliverables are constrained to a specific timescale, budget, and quality standards. And you can see that the key thing that distinguishes project management from product management or ongoing operations is that it does have final deliverables and that it is time bound. And this is a unique consideration because we structure projects around those deliverables as well as around the timeline in order to complete those deliverables, as well as the quality standards or the scope requirements for those deliverables. So we got to make sure that we do our homework correctly and that we turn it in on time. Now, projects can, of course, be very, very simple, such as making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or they can be very complex, such as building an airplane. And we use these examples a lot because they are great examples that meet the requirements, right? So making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it is time limited. There is a deliverable. It's the sandwich. And there are also quality standards. What's your favorite kind of jelly? What kind of peanut butter do you like? You see in this picture, it's also a little unique. This peanut butter and jelly sandwich includes bananas, which is not how I typically make mine, but it could be delicious. So maybe I'll give it a try sometime. And then when we're talking about more complex projects that have hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of components, people, inputs, and different the configuration of how those inputs need to work together in order to make that airplane fly, right? And of course, there's regulatory requirements, there are standards, there's engineering practices, there's design practices. And then if it's a passenger plane, you also have to think about the passenger experience and building all of that into the requirements. But at the end of the day, it is time limited. Once you build the airplane, the project is done. And there is a deliverable. Once you build the airplane, you have an airplane. And so we want to continue kind of thinking about this because comparatively, ongoing operations could go on in perpetuity, right? And within ongoing operations, you're going to have a variety of different projects, whether you consider that like an annual strategic plan, that is your project plan for the year, right? But at the end of the year, that ends and you create new goals or new plans. Or you can think about it as, opening a new clinic, which is something we'll talk about within the health and human services field. But once that clinic is open, then you have to run it in perpetuity, right? And so project management is very unique in that it is time limited and there are deliverables at the end of it. And those deliverables have expectations, which we'll talk about in more detail. So where did this all begin? There's that age-old question that we now have the answer to, but how did the Egyptians build the pyramids? Well, it was a project. And somebody who was very, very smart spent some time to organize the series of events to be able to make that project successful. Now, it has taken us thousands of years to be able to understand how they successfully did that because we didn't consider, all of the nuances and details and thinking about how they were able to construct that. But at the end of the day, building the pyramids or the sphinxes or the cathedrals in medieval times, these are all projects. And they have requirements to be structurally sound, as well as design elements and an intended purpose. But at the end, once the construction is complete, the project is over, it is time limited, and there's the deliverable of the new building. Now, what about in health and human services? Because as far as I'm aware, or at least I assume not many of us are looking to build the pyramids, unless we're looking to build a clinic in the shape of a pyramid. And if you do, let me know. I'd love to come visit. And so in health and human services, there are thousands of things that could be considered projects or would benefit from the knowledge and skills of project management. So implementing new contracts, programs, and evidence-based practices, opening new clinics and hospitals, again, time limited. At the end, there's a deliverable. It's the new building or the new clinic. Implementing new technology, which I know is something we're all rapidly working towards, and continuously implementing new technology, whether that be electronic health records, whether that be health information exchanges, mobile apps, value-based payment technology, whether that be diagnostic tools, surgical tools. There's always new technology coming out into play. And so I imagine that's a big area for all of us in this space. But even something as simple as implementing a new policy and procedure, making sure that the decisions that are made at the executive level make their way all the way down to that front line, that is a project in and of itself. And it has requirements, making sure that the communication methods are effective, the training methods are effective, and making sure that those policies and procedures work within the organization. And even conducting new clinical research, that is a project, right? We have a hypothesis, we design the study and the methodology, we go ahead and implement that study and methodology, and then at the end of the day, we publish a report, and that is the deliverable at the end of that project. And not just in clinical settings, but also in public health and in community health environments, we see tons and tons and tons of projects. Almost all of us, I'm sure, lived through the COVID-19 public health emergency, and that is one example. Fortunately, it was time limited, largely, at least the public health emergency component of it, and making sure that there's deployment and the logistics and education and all the elements that went into managing that public health emergency was a very, very big scale global project for all of us that affected everyone on the planet. And of course, on a county level, on a state level, on a city level, we're constantly implementing new health education campaigns, programs, tobacco cessation, opioid epidemic. There's all kinds of maternal child health programs, WASH programs for water sanitation. These are all projects that in theory and in hope have a time, an expiration date, that we will one day have pure sanitized water in all communities around the world. We will one day eliminate some of the endemic health or contagious diseases, communicable diseases that are in our communities, right? And then, of course, looking at programs or projects, call them performance improvement projects, rapid cycle projects, population health initiatives that are addressing and looking to close healthcare gaps and disparities. That is the intention behind population health and the promotion of health equity, is that one day everyone will achieve the same health outcomes. And to do that, we are implementing programs and strategies and education that, again, one day will come to an end, and the deliverable will be health equity for everyone. And so, in modern times, the formal industry and field of project management. So it really became modernized in the early 1900s and during the Industrial Revolution. And it has really kind of grown and become more formalized since then. The 1950s are when the military really adopted this and started deploying project management principles in the development of larger scale ships and initiatives. And now, in modern times, we're seeing this become far more advanced and technical with advanced methodologies like Scrum, Agile, Waterfall, Critical Path, portfolio management, and there's a million spin-offs, and new ones are being developed and pushed each and every day. And one of the things that is exciting for us, especially for those of us in health and human services, is that this industry, this field of practice is exploding. We have really kind of figured out that this set of tools, this set of process groups, the knowledge areas, and then all of the stuff that comes with it produces real results. This is how you can literally accomplish anything at all. In my personal consulting practice and life, we have used project management to roll out new policies, but also implement billion-dollar health insurance companies. We have used it to roll out mobile health initiatives. We have used it to really make a dent in health disparities within minority populations. It is exciting. You can tell. That's why I'm here, because I'm very, very passionate about this. And we are pulling from the knowledge and experience and expertise of the aerospace industry, engineering, and even architecture. I mean, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of industries that are using this field, and we in Health and Human Services are seeing and have been seeing the benefit of this industry and how it can help us help our clients and our patients that we serve. And one thing that's important to note is that as this industry and field has grown, you can get degrees in project management at the associate's level, at the bachelor's level, at the master's level. I think that there are even doctorate level degrees in project management. And nationally and internationally, there is one institution that is kind of the globally recognized accreditation body, which is the Project Management Institute. And that is who we base all of our training on, are their standards and expectations. And what they call the PMBOK, or the Project Management Body of Knowledge. And so as you continue to participate in courses and training with the Health Insights Hub, just know that your content and the courses that we're developing are grounded in the internationally recognized best standards and best practices, so that we know that we're offering the absolute best of the best resources and content for you. And just one little quote that we recently found in the Harvard Business Review is that the role of the project manager is expected to be one of the fastest growing functions and roles in the entire project management scope. Specifically in the next 2 to 3 years, we are expecting and continuing to expect explosive growth. So now is a very, very exciting time to jump in and kind of build your skills in this area. So what are we talking about? Project management can be broken down into 2 core areas. The first are process steps, the second are knowledge areas. But it's important to note that within those process steps and those knowledge areas, there are hundreds of inputs, processes, outputs, tools, templates, strategies, tactics, and best practices that have been developed, both in other industries as well as in health and human services. And if you are considering or you decide to sit for your associate of project management certification or your professional of project management certification, your PMP, those 2 tests are going to be rigorous and grueling on those very specific inputs, processes, and outputs. And so those are the things that, while these process steps and the knowledge areas that I'm about to introduce are kind of the overarching big picture components, it really gets into the weeds. And there's that, old phrase that death is in the details. And I like to believe that so is success. If that is what can make or break you, then really equipping yourself with all of the tools and resources that project management has to offer can put you that much further ahead in the game and make you that much more successful in accomplishing your goals and having the impact that you want to have on the world. And so let's take a quick look at what these process steps are. I don't think that these are remarkable. I don't think that this is blowing anyone's mind necessarily, but whenever you're starting a project or you're considering running a project, you start in the initiation phase, right? And in that phase, you define what is this project? What is the scope of it at a very high level? Who's involved? What do we need to be considering? What could go wrong? Those types of things. And what I just described are the knowledge areas that we'll discuss next. So after you kind of initiate and outline what you think is going to happen or what you want to happen, really set that goal, then you go into the planning phase. The planning phase is a big step. It's making sure that you go through each of the knowledge areas very thoughtfully and that you engage the right people around your team to make sure that you can be as thorough in planning as possible. Again, we've probably all heard that phrase that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. That is very much so reinforced in the principles of project management. And then you move into the next part, which is the fun part, the chaotic part. For those of you guys that are adrenaline junkies and really love tracking and making sure that everything's going on pace and all of that stuff, this is for you. It's the execution phase. This is when you do the work, right? And within doing that work, you also want to be concurrently monitoring the work. So if you're working a project that has 10 different steps and maybe, 5 different deliverables, you want to make sure that those steps are taking place in the correct order and that those deliverables are meeting the requirements as they're coming in. Because I think we all know the phrase, again, garbage in, garbage out, right? So if step one, you had to, get all of your materials for your peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but you forgot the peanut butter, well, then you can't move into step two and actually make your peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? And so making sure that you are monitoring the execution of your steps is very important. And then the last component, the last process in project management is controlling. And this is when you kind of document and formalize and make sure that everything that you've learned throughout your process is being captured, that you now know that peanut butter stays on the shopping list, right? And that you want to make sure that you have that particular ingredient on hand at all times because you want to be ready for the next time you want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Again, I know it's a silly example, but for simplicity's sake, I wanted to offer it. So as I just mentioned, there's these process steps: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling. But what is it that we are planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling? Those are what the knowledge areas are. And so here we can see the different knowledge areas in project management. The first one is integration management, which is really focusing on how all of these things work together. I don't want to call that an ancillary element, but there's not a lot of formal activities in integration management except kind of the analytic capacity of the project manager and making sure that your project plan or work breakdown structure are really considering how all of these things are functioning and working together. And so when we're talking about kind of the actual work, we ultimately, or at least I ultimately kick off with scope management, which is the defining of the what. What is the project? What are its requirements? So peanut butter and jelly sandwich, do we have a preference for almond butter versus, regular peanut butter, cashew butter? What kind of jelly do we want, right? Like that's all part of the scope. What kind of bread? Crust, no crust? Do we want it cut? Do we want it whole? Do we want it heated up in an air fryer, which is delicious? Definitely try it if you haven't. But defining the requirements of the project are what scope management is all about. Time management. When do we need it by? Scheduling, making sure that again, all of your activities are organized in a way that they make sense, so that task number one flows into task number two, which flows into task number three, and you don't get to that moment when you're starving and you realize I'm out of peanut butter. Oh my gosh, I missed step one, which was going to the grocery store, right? The fourth component here is cost management. All projects have budgets. There is no such thing as a unlimited budget, even at the largest corporations in the world, which we have been honored to work with Fortune 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, and 500 companies. And every single one of them has a budget. And no matter how excited they are about the initiative, there is a point in time where they will say, we can't afford this anymore. And so making sure that your project stays in cost, right, in budget, is a huge component of this. Some project managers never really touch this aspect, and that's okay. It just depends on the type of work that you're doing. If you're writing policies and procedures and rolling out training programs, there may not be a big budgetary driver to your project, but it's still important to consider it. The next requirement or knowledge area is quality management. So again, setting those expectations. We're going back to peanut butter and jelly. There's a big difference between store-bought bread, between homemade bread, right? Store-bought jam or jelly or whatever you like versus homemade. Maybe if you're on a diet and you need sugar-free, or all of those different things matter when it comes to the quality of the dish that you're creating or the quality of the project that you're making. And so again, in health and human services, quality management is a whole industry in our field, or it's a whole field of practice in our industry, I should say. But making sure that we are actually getting people better, and that the work that we're doing is high quality, is something that we're going to plan for. It's something we're going to initiate. It's something we're going to monitor, and it's something we're going to control for. Resource management sometimes gets confusing with cost management, but when we're talking about resources, we're talking about human beings, so human resources, but we're also talking about equipment, we're talking about supplies, and all of that stuff is a really, really big driver of our success. If you need access to a particular piece of equipment to implement your program or your project, and that piece of equipment is not due or is not available for 6 more months because it's booked, or the supply chain issues that have been affecting all of us in the early 2020s, if those things are impeding your ability to complete your project, it's stuff that you want to plan for and potentially even have backup plans for. There's another age-old adage, or at least a quality management quote, that 90% of project management is about communication. And so when communication management is central and core to the success of the work that we're doing, most projects have multiple, if not dozens or hundreds of people involved in them, and making sure that every single one of those people has the right information that they need, not too much, not too little, but the right information, and that they get it at the right time is a make or break in any project. And structuring systems of communication, whether they be live systems of communication or whether they be asynchronous, offline, static, such as an intranet or a newsletter or an email. I don't have to be in the meeting to get the message, right? Those types of things are really, really important and integral to managing the success, because what you will find is that not everyone can show up to every meeting. And so if you were only communicating to people live in meetings, then there are probably going to be people that miss the message, or that means you have to do a lot of one-on-one follow-up communication. And then, of course, tracking the project is a part of communication management, making sure people know where we're at, what the risks are, what's coming up, all of those elements. And speaking of risks, risk management. I'm pretty sure all of us that have done this before know that no project goes according to plan. No matter how well you plan, no matter how thoughtfully you plan, no matter how much you contemplate what could go wrong, something else will go wrong. And so risk management is all about identifying what those potential risks are, and then making sure you have mitigation strategies. Is it a risk that you can accept? Is it a risk that you absolutely cannot accept? And how are you going to manage it if and when it happens? And ultimately tracking that and making sure that your risk profile isn't getting too elevated to impact or impede the project success is definitely something that we as project managers need to keep our eye on and manage very, very, very closely. Procurement management, very similar or related to, I should say, to resource management. We don't always have all the resources that we need. And so if for whatever reason, to complete your project, you need to purchase a mobile health clinic. Actually, just did this with a client. And that was what they wanted to do. They wanted to purchase a mobile health clinic, but the mobile health clinic had a 5-month lead time. So you order it and it takes 5 months for that thing to be delivered. That really impacted our project timeline and our schedule. And so we can already see how procurement management is affecting time management, right? And it also affected, costs and resources, because, we didn't want to staff up on day one and then have people sitting around for 5 months, not being able to actually implement the program. And so thinking through what resources you might need to go out and purchase because you don't have them in-house or recruit, and making sure that you're building in that time. And then procurement is its own beast. If you're issuing an RFP, you have to write to the RFP. You have to get it approved. You have to give people time. You have to socialize it amongst potential vendors, right? Give them time to respond to the RFP. And then you need a framework to evaluate and score the different people that bid on your project to make sure that you are, in fact, getting the best, most qualified vendor to meet your needs here. Then the last knowledge area we're going to discuss today is stakeholder management. So stakeholders are anyone that cares about your project. And those can be direct stakeholders like your boss, your supervisor, your coworkers, but they can also be indirect, especially in health and human services. Our work is often government funded, so we often have to consider, whether that be city, county, state, or federal legislation and government officials. There's also typically, a lot of finance components to it. Some of us rely on grants to implement our programs. And so making sure that all of those people are aware of what we're doing, are in support of what we're doing. And if they're not in support of what we're doing, making sure we have a plan to keep them engaged and try to win their support and earn their support. And this can take a lot of shaking hands and kissing babies, for lack of a better analogy. But stakeholder management, is a key element. I think many of us, or at least I have, certainly worked projects where a really important person was accidentally left off of a meeting invite, right? And then it became a big issue, and we had to go back and kind of re-engage and reaffirm their importance and their value to the project and why we wanted them to be a part of it, and again, apologize, all those types of things. Or I think we've probably all sat in meetings where the key decision maker wasn't in the room, and so there wasn't anything we could do. We could sit and talk, but without that key person to make the final call, we were kind of just sitting in a room staring at each other and talking about good stuff. So stakeholder management is a really, really important component. So that's all we have for today, short and sweet. But as part of our introduction, just wanted to kind of give a big lay of the land here, and hopefully catch your attention and find things that might pique your interest. The rest of our training and our programs deep dive into each of these areas. And so if there's a specific topic, process group, or knowledge area that you really feel like you want to grow in and learn more about, please check out our other courses, check out our tools and templates. If you don't see what you're looking for, you can always get into one of our health impact community forums and phone a friend, see if someone else has a best practice or lessons learned or has worked a similar project like yours. And at the end of the day, reach out to us. We are happy to create content that is custom tailored and that is specific to the needs of our community and the people that are participating with us in the Health Insights Hub. So thank you so much, and we hope you have a great day.